Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am so stoked for this video because I am starting a series where basically you pick a cosplay out for me and I will thrift it. The rules are simple. Pick a character and I will have to thrift 80% of the cosplay. So for my first cosplay, one of my followers said I should do Mako from Kill la Kill. Not just Mako, but Fight Club Mako. I had a blast making this, and it didn't cost that much either. Stick to the end of the video and we're gonna discover how much I spent on this cosplay. So let's go ahead and get started. So thrifting this cosplay was kind of hard. Finding the exact color I wanted was really tough because I'm really picky, so what I decided is getting this white sheet from the thrift store, which was only $4. I then created my pattern on the white sheet. So right now what I'm doing is I am measuring and cutting the material for my skirt. So while I am tracing my pattern for the skirt, I wanted to remind everybody that I self-draft all my patterns. You can definitely use the simplicity pattern. I highly recommend doing that. It definitely would have made my process a lot easier, but unfortunately I did not have the pattern with me on hand and it wasn't on sale. So yeah, I would highly recommend getting that pattern before starting this cosplay. So Joann Fabrics, I know they do a sale of like the $1.99 patterns right after Halloween. They sometimes do it in the fall too, but that's usually when I grab all my patterns. I just stock up on like 30 different patterns and just kind of keep them until the next Halloween. So now what I am doing is I am putting all my pattern pieces on the material. I was super grateful that all my pattern pieces fit on that material. I used up the whole thing. So yeah, $4 and was able to cut out all my pattern pieces. So once I cut out all my pattern pieces, I took the pieces that needed to be dyed and started my dyeing process. So start boiling your water, or almost boiling your water, and then add a cup of salt. Once you add your cup of salt, I then chose this like evening blue RIT dye. It just was what I wanted and I only used half a cup. I really recommend during this process that you test out on your scrap material. So go ahead and mix it, and this is my scrap material, and then you have to make sure it's wet before you dunk it into the dye. So I constantly stirred my test piece for around like 15-20 minutes to the desire of what I wanted it to be. Remember that it's gonna look way darker when you're doing this. Make sure that you rinse it under cold water and that it is dry before you start dunking it on your real fabric. So this is what my pieces looked like. And I was super happy with the color until I brought it inside and they are two completely different colors. This is lighter than this one. I was so mad and had to start the process all over again. So the next time around, what I did instead is I dunked the whole fabric. So instead of cutting your pieces and then dyeing, make sure that you dye it before you cut the pieces. It's just gonna look a lot nicer like this one did. So now what I am doing is I am going to make the hem for my skirt. I like to hem the skirt before I pleat it, and it just makes it look a lot nicer as well. Once I ironed the hem, I then sewed it on. If you notice on my sewing machine, I have painter's tape to help guide me. This really helped me when I was sewing. It just kept the lines all straight. Next, what I am doing is I am making the pleats for my skirt. So this is how I did it. I did it by 3 inches by 3 inches. So 3 inches for the pleat, and then you just kind of fold it over like this. So, and bam. That's pretty much how I made my pleats. So once I figured that out, I ironed it again, and then I did 2 inches down. So when I was on the sewing machine, I knew exactly where to stop and all of it looked pretty even. I also want to mention too that any products that I have shown here, I will put down in the link below. It is going to be an Amazon affiliate link, so anything that you buy will definitely help me out. So yeah, please consider buying off of it, please. So once we went ahead and made all our pleats, we're gonna go ahead and take this belt and we're gonna flip it over and we're gonna go ahead and sew along the edge right there and make our belt. Once we're done with that, we're gonna go ahead and flip this puppy over and then we're gonna do our invisible zipper. I know this can intimidate a lot of people, but I promise you it's not that bad as long as you have the right tools. So this is how I do my invisible zippers. So we're gonna go ahead and flip the zipper over and that's the side it's gonna be on. So we're just gonna go ahead and flip it over and then we're gonna pin it to that side. Once you are done pinning, we are then going to be pulling the teeth this way when we are sewing with our invisible zipper foot. This really helps get really into that little groove and just make it look a lot more seamless. So please take your time with this and make sure you're using an invisible zipper foot. And voila, we now have an invisible zipper in this skirt. Look at how pretty that looks. This is what the skirt looks like, and now we can finally move on to the top. Okay, so honesty hour, everyone. Like I said before, I basically had to start completely over when the whole dyeing mishap happened. I tried to save my shirt, but I accidentally sewed it, and then I tried to take it apart and it just ripped. So thankfully I had some fabric left over, but let's just pretend that all this material is basically the material I used before I messed up on the dyeing experiment. So what I'm doing now is I am doing the collar for the shirt. I am taking this interfacing and then cutting that out. Once we are done cutting out our pattern pieces, we are then going to iron our pattern pieces before we stick our interfacing on there. It's just going to make it look a lot smoother, and we don't want a wrinkly collar. So now I am going to add the interfacing on both the top piece and the bottom piece. So you want to be sure that you have interfacing on both sides of the collar. This just really makes it look a lot nicer and I guess a lot stiffer. It just looks better that way, in my opinion. Next, we're gonna go ahead and get our bias tape ready. I took some regular bias tape and I just cut down the middle. I know that there's probably bias tape this small, but this is what I found. So once I ironed it in half and got it to where I wanted it to be, I took the side where I liked my collar the most and I went ahead and pinned it. Once everything was pinned down, I then took my straight stitch foot and then I just basically sewed along the edge. I tried to get as close to the edge as possible so it looked pretty seamless and clean. Please be patient with this step. This is definitely not a step where you want to zoom and just kind of ruin it. It's kind of like a one-shot deal. Once you get going, there's no going back. So once I stitch that on, I am then taking my top piece and my bottom piece and I'm going to be sewing along the edge right here. That part is sewn, I'm going to cut the edges off right here and I'm going to flip it right side out. So now we're going to go ahead and pin the collar to the shirt. Make sure that the shirt is facing the right way so you're not seeing any seams, and then you're going to go ahead and pin and sew around the collar. Once you're done sewing, you're going to then take this piece, which has interfacing in it, and you're going to go ahead and pin it and sew it again. Once you're done sewing, you're going to go ahead and flip it around and it's basically going to leave a really nice touch. I know this step is kind of confusing. It confused me for a little bit. Again, the simplicity pattern goes over this pretty well. So yeah, that's basically your collar. And then what I did is I then ironed it to make sure that it laid flat and it looked pretty nice. Next, I am ironing the hem on my shirt. Again, I love doing the hems before I put the whole cosplay together. It just makes it so much easier. So yeah, I did the hem and then this is me putting the sleeve on. Once you're done pinning, you're going to go ahead and sew the sleeve and then you're going to sew the side hem. So for the tie material, it is actually the $4 bed sheet, but instead of leaving the dye in for 15 minutes, I left it in for an hour and it turned out like this. It looks so good. Then go ahead and do the bottom hem of the shirt and then sew it, and voila, you have your uniform ready. We made this whole uniform for $25.44. Now it's time to work on Mako's jacket for Fight Club Mako. I got this jacket at the thrift store for only $10. So during this part of the tutorial, you might see some items that I don't price out, and that is because I actually hoard a lot of items since I'm a cosplayer and I use these on a majority of my costumes. So yeah, so if you don't see items priced, it is because I've already owned it and I've used coupons and waited for sales for these. So this is what it looks like, and I thought that it needed some support, so what I did is I actually took some cardboard from one of my wig shipments and I just put it in there. And this is the result. Looks pretty spiffy, right? Now that our coat is all done, we're gonna go ahead and work on the details. You can get these stars basically at any baking store or Joann Fabrics, and then we're gonna take this foam clay from Amazon and we're gonna put those in the mold. Once they are in the mold, I like to let them dry overnight. Oh my gosh, my camera didn't focus. Well, I used some Flexbond that I already owned and I just covered it with the stars. Once it dries, I then put some acrylic paint on it and just kind of brushed it on there. Next, I'm going to be working on the front of the jacket. So these are the buttons I used, and I'm also using the trim as well, and I'm just going to wrap that up so it doesn't fray, and I'm going to hand sew it to the front of the jacket. So I actually had some foam scraps left over from previous projects. So if you're a cosplayer like me, definitely save your foam scraps because I didn't have to go out and buy foam for this project. I just basically used scraps. But if you're new to cosplay, I would highly recommend that you go to Joann and wait for the 50% off coupon so you can get your foam for basically 50% off. So then I took my Dremel and then I made sure that the edges were all clean. I cannot thank Kinpatsu Cosplay enough because this gesso is honestly a lifesaver. I prefer it better than foam clay sometimes, and that quick seal. Oh my gosh, like I love this so much. So even though I had scraps for the spikes, I didn't have the foam dowels for the bottom piece. So they were actually having a sale at Joann at the time where the foam dowels were like 25% off. So yeah, I got those for a pretty good deal, and I went ahead and put some contact cement on it and waited for it to dry and then just kind of put them together and put it on the bottom. So my airbrush machine wasn't working that day, so I decided to go to the store and grab this paint, and I painted all the spikies in this red, and it actually looks pretty good. It still has that shine from the Flexbond. So yeah, now what I'm doing is I'm taking this Velcro and I am cutting them and then hot gluing them to the bottom of the piece so they stick. Then with the other end, I sewed it on a strap that actually came with the coat, which was actually super convenient. I didn't have to put it on the coat or anything. So I took the strap and I just looped it through with the Velcro on, and yeah, wow, that looks so nifty. So this is absolutely completely optional. I am just very lucky to have this machine and have it be able to cut stuff for me. I am absolutely in love with it. You can absolutely cut things by hand. I have done it in the past before I got this machine. So please don't feel like you need to have this, but yeah, no, I did because I just wanted to use it, and it turned out so nice. So I'm taking the scrap pieces that I had and just kind of cleaning it up a bit. And this is what the pieces look like. Definitely leave a comment down below if you want a tutorial of how I got the shapes and what settings I used for my silhouette machine. It was definitely a learning curve, but it was so much fun and I just love how they turned out. So I took that star pattern from my silhouette machine and I wanted it a little bit thicker. So I took a scrap piece of 5mm foam and just kind of cut that out and just sanded the edges a little bit. Next, we're gonna take my favorite handy dandy Flexbond and we're gonna go ahead and cover all of our foam pieces. Once they were dry, I then used some gold spray paint and then covered the pieces that needed to be gold. Once they were dry, I then took some black acrylic paint and I did the edges of the lettering. I really felt like this made it pop a little bit more and just made the letters really stick out. This is totally optional, but like I said, I just feel like it just makes the letters pop just a little bit more. I then took some leftover foam dowels and then made the rings for the ring. I guess like the finger loops, I guess that's what you would call it. Here, you'll see it in a second. And voila! I really love this ring. This is actually like my favorite part of the whole cosplay because it just looks so real and I just love how it fits on my hand and how shiny it is. Yeah. And then what I did is I hot glued the moon piece on this Amazon like cop hat. And then I also forgot to film the golden dowel that I had left over from the spikes. And I just did some primer and then I painted it and I'm basically gluing it on. And that is it for the coat. So this coat cost me like $35.59 and that includes all the accessories on it. So with that plus the uniform, it cost around like $61.03. Not pretty bad. I really hope for the next cosplay that I keep it under 50. We'll see about that. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I really hope it helped you. I really want to show people that cosplay can be very affordable and that thrifting is actually an amazing resource. So yeah, I really hope you enjoyed. Please comment down below what you would like to see next. I am definitely up for the challenge and I will see you next time.